Assalamu alaikum, brothers and sisters. On behalf of our beloved resident Imam, Tariq El-Amin, the Taleem Committee, Doctors Aisha El-Amin and Gloria Bashir, and myself, Lionel Allen Jr., I want to welcome you to today's Taleem. Very, very excited to have this conversation, to provide this platform for our dear brother, Omar Yamini. Today's topic is life after, thriving after incarceration. It's a really important conversation for us to have for a number of different reasons that we'll get into in just a few minutes. But I want to recall a conversation that I had with Brother Clyde El-Amin. Oftentimes when we talk after Juma, the theme of our conversations is the brilliance and the talent that we have within our community that we don't even know about or don't always acknowledge. And so this brother that's going to be the focal point of the dialogue today is an example of that talent and that brilliance that Brother Clyde is referring to. I'm going to turn it over to him in just a few minutes to begin to share his story. And just so that you know, this is going to be very conversational. I wanted to feel like we're just in the barbershop, having a conversation, having a dialogue about important issues. But I also want everyone who's with us to feel comfortable, being a part of this. We hope to be an interactive discussion. So if you have a question or comment, please feel free to throw it in the chat. I'm going to be monitoring the chat. I have some prepared questions that I want to make sure that we pose to Omar, but obviously we want you to be a part of this as well and want you to feel as involved in this conversation as possible, considering the constraints of doing this via Zoom. I want to begin just by giving you an example of the power of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and how he puts the right people in your life at the right time. So let me just tell a quick story, and I promise I'll be brief. It was probably 2008, 2009. I was principal of an elementary school on the south side of Chicago, the Sherman School of Excellence. And I was having a particularly rough day. It was a tough, challenging community, beautiful people, beautiful families, but we had a lot of challenges. It was a particularly tough day. And we had just been acknowledged by Representative Esther Golar's office for growth on some sort of academic assessment. And in walks this lady who I think worked for the representative. She came into the office and we were talking, and she presented me with the award, said congratulations. And we started to talk, and somehow she found out that I was Muslim. And she kept going on and on about how much I reminded her of her son. And she knew I was having a bad day. And she said, look, I'm going to write something down on a piece of paper. And when you get home, I want you to read it. But I don't want you to read it until you get home. So, following the directives of my elders, I said, yes, ma'am. She gave me the piece of paper. I put it in my pocket. I went home and I read it later on that day. The ayat was something like this. I'm gonna butcher it a little bit, but you'll get the gist of it. That Allah won't change the condition of a people until they change the condition of their hearts. That was what she had written down on this piece of paper. And so fast forward maybe 4 or 5 years, I meet this brother named Omar. We're having breakfast and he's talking to me about his book, right? This is the book. I'm plugging it, I am. And we're having this conversation. And as we talk, and we start to talk about people who we knew and circles we ran in or whatever, come to find out that was his mother. That Omar's mother was at my school, lifting me up, right, with the words of Allah, right? Allah speaks the truth. And fast forward 4 or 5 years later, I'm going to meet this man that she said that I reminded her so much of, having this breakfast conversation about ways that he can support the work that we were trying to do in the schools and the young men that we were trying to serve. To me, I can't think of a better example of just how powerful Allah is and just how he knows where to put you and who to connect you with at the right time. I'll also add, and I'm going to be quiet after this, that Omar is the reason that I am now a part of this community. He's the person that introduced me to Imam Tariq. He's the person that introduced me to this beautiful community of Masjid al-Taqwa. So I owe this brother a debt of gratitude for a lot of things, that being probably the most important one. So I'm just really excited that he's here and that he's going to be having this conversation with us. And so I want to stop talking. Omar, thank you again for joining us, brother. I want to start by asking you just to share a little bit of your journey. I mean, it's all in the book, but I want you to talk to us a little bit about your journey and how you ended up in a situation where you were incarcerated for 15 years, right? From 20 to 35, you were on the sidelines, as they say. Can you talk to us a little bit about that journey? And then I want to get into what happened after that.
Well, I'm gonna start with you, bro, actually. And I don't let certain people get away from me. When I meet somebody, when the spirit is real, when it's sincere, I know my community. I know what kind of men and women we have over there, what kind of thinkers we have. And I was like, nope. So I was fishing. I said, I got one, coach. I got one, coach. We gonna go ahead and get them over here with us, with the way we think, and only Allah with this particular community. The sister you met, my mother. For those of you who don't know, Ijlal. Sister Ijlal is my mother. Ijlal Munir, who's been in this community for a long time, had partnered with Imam W.D. Muhammad to run CPC. And Imam Muhammad, I grew up with that family, actually. His grandchildren, Tahira, Dorian, we all grew up together. In fact, when my mom was working at the foundation on 79th Street, I'm gonna say 79th and Champlain, that building raised us. That was home for us. I remember Sister Shirley's, her office at right there at the top of the stairs. So that was where we snuck in and got all our candy and learned a whole lot about office work. But to answer the question, born and raised in the community under the leadership of Imam W.D. Muhammad, to two parents who did everything they could to raise us the best way we could. We came from a wonderful community life over there on Stony Island with Sister Clara Muhammad School. And honestly, my spirit, the involvement of what we're doing with our Masjid, the Taqwa Center, is all based on what I knew and what I understood life was as a child, community life. And it is the absolute best. Well, I didn't have just one mother. I had 50 surrogates. You know what I mean? The men, the women, they had permission to get in our business, to check us. We don't have that. That's what's missing. A lot of what's missing in our community. But it can happen to any one of us when if we allow ourselves to invite harmful influences into our lives. Teenagers, I'm speaking of. When you get that particular age. And you are going through your own identity. You're finding yourself. You're discovering who and what you are, the things that you can relate to in this world, the things that impresses you, the things that you don't want no parts of. You go through those periods and that adolescence stage, and I'm no different than anyone else. And hanging out, ripping and running in the street. And I went to prison. First-degree murder. Chicago police put a body. We call them bodies. They gave me a case. The Chicago Police Department gave me a case. Didn't have an attorney at the time. Poor Black folks working with the public defenders, and I had to do. Judge sentenced me to 30 years. 1996. Judge sentenced me to 30 years. I had to do 15, and only by a few months, I'm gonna say, of my arrest, because 4 months after my arrest, near the end of 1996, the law changed. And at the time, it was day for day. You do half of what the judge sentences you to.
Okay.
And now it's you do 100% murders, you have to do 100% of the time. That law changed about 4 months after I got arrested, or I would have had to do that entire 30 years. You would have never met me.
Wow.
We would have never met, Lionel.
Yeah, that's deep. So what I'm hearing you say is that you grew up in a a strong community. You said you had not just one mother, but 50 surrogates, yet the street still got you, right? So tell me, what do you think as you reflect on that time in your life? What went wrong or what was missing? You had this rich upbringing within our community. What was missing that you think compelled you to move in that direction?
Well, we all have our own journeys. You don't know what your journey is going to be.
Yeah.
And in spite of having a mother in our community as involved as she was, brothers and sisters. I have a brother that's in the Air Force, sergeant in the Air Force. I have another brother who was a 9-time All-American in college, played in NFL. I have another sister who is a early childhood educator. I have another sister who is a property manager, a massive property manager here in the Chicago area. So I was the only of my 6 siblings. I was the only one. You see what I mean? It didn't happen to the other 5. It happened to the one with the strong. I have a strong will. I have a very strong will, and honestly, I'm the male version of my mother. To be honest with you, and people tell me that all the time. I'm like strong-willed, hard-headed. I'm doing it. We're gonna do it the right way, and if it's not the right way, it's gonna be my way.
So you find yourself, incarcerated at the age of 20, looking at, potentially 30 years, but looking at 15 years for sure. You often hear about people in prison who lose themselves, right? The conditions are such that it reshapes and reforms them into someone that they didn't enter into the penitentiary as. What was it that prevented that from happening to you? How did you maintain your sanity over those 15 years? And then tell us what role Islam played and maybe grounding you and helping you to maintain your sanity and just your healthy mental state over that time you were incarcerated.
So the real answer to that, especially with some hindsight at my age now, looking back, that was 26 years ago. I'm 46 now.
Yeah.
Only Al-Islam. It was the foundation. It was the foundation that I had coming into that place. Even though I had got away from my family, roots are roots. Okay, your legs are your legs. I come from good stock. So when the madness slowed down, when I had to sit in that cell and everything got quiet, everything that I was raised with came back. When you sit still and those influences can't, impress you the way they were.
Yeah.
Everything comes back. All the we hear professional athletes all the time say, trust your training, trust your skill. Right? It's like a muscle.
Yeah.
That's what happened to me. When they got quiet in that cell, everything that I learned, everything that I was raised with, all the sense and sensibility started returning, number one. Number two, the alcohol and drugs wear off when you're in prison. When you're incarcerated, you sober up. And when you're sobering up, things start to make sense. You can use your rational mind is taking control again. And you are able to make the connections you need to make at that time. That's what happened to me. And it was only our religion, in my opinion. And I say that because my family is Muslim. And I had not only the Quran and the Uswatan, the examples of Muhammad the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, but I had a family that comes from the community, our community, who I didn't get the type of you can do better when you come home kind of assessment or help. Mine was, okay, let's fix this. Okay, it was more of, okay, let's heal this, let's repair this. So when you do, because I had an outdate, right? I'm not a lifer. So when you do touch down, we can keep you going as best as we can, hit the ground running. And that was the attitude of my family. Yeah. And so faith and family are the two most important pieces of incarceration, because you're doing that time alone. Now, we like to say that. You're not, I'll take that back. You're not doing that time alone, but after you finish those communications, that cell door closed. I'll say that. You're in that cell alone. You're in that cell alone. You're in that environment alone. And you have to now deal with the environment that place produces.
Yeah, you right. And for those of us that's just joining us, assalamu alaikum. Welcome to this conversation. We are talking with Omar Yamini, author, speaker, activist, entrepreneur. You write in your book, what's that noise? Somebody's going to hurt me. It's the fear of being kept, treated, and controlled like an animal. It's the fear of losing your human dignity. Was that how you felt every day? Was that the type of stress you were living under every day, thinking that someone was going to harm you, thinking that your human dignity was being stolen from you while incarcerated?
The thought was the dignity, not the physical harm.
Okay.
Not the physical harm. I'm 6'6". I'm 6'6". Excuse me, 6'6". I wish I was 6'6". I'm 6'4". I'm 6'4", 240, right? So I'm not thinking about nobody putting their hands on me. I can defend myself. And at the time, I got a bunch of buddies and friends. It's not that. No, I got some brothers. We, even being Muslim, your Muslim community, your Muslim brothers, you don't have that fear of the physical harm. It's that dignity. It's that time. It's that your parents dying. It's your children dying. It's your cousins dying. It's thinking that one day I'm going to come home and this old man and not being able to help take care of my mama or my father, or not being able to help out with the family. And if I do, when I do and able to help out with the family, how old, how physically strong am I going to be in this situation with literally, Lionel, with no education, no work ethic, no work history. And I know I say this a lot and it sounds regurgitatory, but when you do so much time, and this gets to a man, and okay, the light is at the end of the tunnel. Here comes my out date. But a lot of those brothers, we call it bugging up, that stress start hitting them real hard. Like, okay, wait a minute. Now you on your way home. What's this fear here? It's because I'm not educated. I have no work history. I have no work ethic. I have no idea how to communicate in a workspace. Hell, I don't even know how to talk to women. So now I'm coming home, and as a man, knowing what the society is it don't care about men crying or whining about about hard times. You have to produce. You got to kick in. You have to help. And that is the greatest fear I've seen for most men and coming home who have not developed, and the development in prison is all self-sufficient. You got to get after it yourself. You got to get after yourself, or you will come home a good-looking man. That's what you're going to be. You will come home looking okay, physically fit, healthy, you've been sleeping, no work in your hands, no stress on your back, you look good. But there's no substance. None. There's no education in there. You can't have a conversation with your fiance about how to grow wealth. What you gonna talk about growing wealth for? What you know? So there are these anxieties for men and women, I suppose, who have spent so much time in prison and have never prepared themselves.
We read this book years ago. When I say we, I'm referring to myself, but many of my students, we made this required reading for a couple of school years so they could really understand. And one of the things I was really impressed with is how descriptive your writing is. Like, you really paint the picture. You bring the reader into the cell with you.
Yes.
For those who haven't read the book, and if you haven't, I recommend that you pick it up. It's well worth the read. Can you share something to folks who have never done time, something that they would probably find most surprising? Right, like you watch documentaries on the prison system. Some of us, watched Oz many years ago, right? We see these really sort of hyper dramatic kind of depictions of what being in prison is about. What's something that maybe would be surprising to folks who've never done time before?
So number one is location.
Okay.
Number one, every state is different. That whole state thing, man, it's state prisons who are in, let's say, democratic states, more liberal leaning states, okay, have a tendency to have programs, school programs, anything to help condition the mind to prepare you for home. Republican places they have an attitude, and and I'm only saying this because of ideologies. Liberal ideology, democratic ideology versus a Republican ideology. There's this programmatic. Let's program them up. A lot of that has to do with a lot of African American involvement in the Democratic Party. That's somebody's phone.
Yeah, I'm muting it now. Please mute yourselves, ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters.
And so when you have a place like that, they're more,
Uh-oh, we lost you, brother.
I'm back.
Yep, you back now. Go ahead. Yep.
Whereas to another place, more Republican is hard time. You got to do that time for some labor involved in it. So that's number one. And so when I talk about my book, I'm very particular about the state of Illinois. I stay in Illinois prisons. I describe the conditions of what those of us who are from Chicago are going to have to deal with, because this is Illinois. Now, Illinois can swing because we can have a Republican governor or we can have a Democratic governor. And when those governors switch, so do their policies. I was in prison under 2 Republicans and 2 Democrats. When the Republican was in office, they removed all the programs. When the Democrat was in office, they have it going with all kind of college and different kinds of stuff to keep people busy. You see the difference? So location matters when we're talking about what's going on in these prisons. That's big. Number 2, it is important to know, again, this is depending on state.
Yep.
There's not a lot of drugs and alcohol in prisons in Illinois because the prisons are more secluded. It's called, the state has more control over their prison population here. The prison guards control the prison. It's not, some states, it's the inmates run those places. Okay, when you have a state that, if we're talking about a prison where it's more inmate ran, they kind of move around, then they got a different set of issues there. You're dealing with the law of the jungle. Wow. And you better know you're dealing with the law of the jungle. So that's what that is. State-ran prisons and inmate-ran prisons are the 2 differences. Inmate-ran prisons are will give you the idea and the stereotypes that we have out here looking at prisons, the violence and the crazy. That can happen in an inmate-ran prison because the guards are kind of letting them do their own thing. That don't happen here in Illinois. They have absolute control, and it happened, I'm gonna say, maybe in 1994, because at once upon a time, these guys here had fur coats and cash and diamond rings and radios, stereos, all in maximum security prisons here in Illinois. They was getting down. They had wads of cash. But I don't know what they're gonna do with that money, but they had it.
Yeah.
And that was like 2 years before my arrest. So we're not talking about a condition that the state of Illinois is not far from, because Illinois switched all around, I'm saying in the early 90s, because it was really a prison an inmate, a prisoner ran place.
Yeah. Take us back to June 19th, 2011, the night before you were going to be released, right? Tell me what was on your mind. How did you feel? Did you sleep that night? Did you eat that day? Take us back to that moment where it now release is imminent. It's not 10 years down the road. It's not next month. It's tomorrow morning. I'm getting out of here. Talk to us about those emotions.
It was a full day.
In what way?
It was a full day. So when I was in prison, I was imam in Logan, and we had a bunch of brothers, and we had some soldiers for real. And when I say you hear brothers talk about that Mujahid, listen, we had one. We had a group, and so my day basically before was spent just with those brothers, you know, saying my goodbyes. We had done some time together. Now at that place, I had been down there at that time, was about four years maybe, because I like to move around from prison to prison.
I haven't actually called. I told Omar.
Sister Adia, you're gonna have to put that on mute.
Yeah, I got it.
So you know, my day before was just spent reaching out and saying my goodbyes with our brothers, you know, doing some encouraging, so that's pretty much was it, because I've done my time. I was prepared to go home. It's time for me to go. So let me go see my brothers. I remember that was the majority of my day. Just finding reasons to get out the building. Somebody, I got to go to the healthcare, signing, asking to go to the healthcare just to walk. Yeah. And maybe dipping my head in another cell house or go over to the medical wing, the infirmary. Because I got some brothers who, some Muslim who part of our community who were working there. Or I would go over to the barber shop. One of my closest friends, he was a barber there, who's home now, he's at a barber. One of the brothers who was also imam, we had to share those duties there. Okay. So that was the most of my time spent that day. Yeah. The day before going home was just let me go check in with my brothers who helped me through this time, this period.
Yeah. Assalamu alaikum, brothers and sisters. For those that just joining us, we are with Omar Yamini, author, speaker, activist, entrepreneur, talking to us about his journey and how he's been able to thrive after 15 years of incarceration. What you write about in the epilogue of your book about the day that you walked out of Logan and you see the big black SUV outside waiting on you, and just how you were smiling so much, your jaws and your cheeks were hurting from just all that happiness. It's just a beautiful description of how you felt that day, and my heart was warmed as I read that. Let's shift. So we talked about what you've experienced inside, right? Let's talk about what you've been able to accomplish since your release. So can you share with the brothers and sisters who do not know all the things you've done and accomplished since your release from Logan?
So we start with Allah, only Allah and family. I'm like third, fourth. I'm at the bottom of that whole. And I say that honestly, Lionel, because like when you come home, so I wasn't just talking about brother, I'm speaking of myself here. Coming home with no work history, no work ethic, very little education. I had no idea, like women and children and babies, touching babies and being gentle, being very gentle with touching things. You know, everything is hard and steel in prison. So you don't have a mind to be careful when you're handling things. So I had a sensory overload, number one. This was, it felt like almost, I felt kind of like I was having a nervous breakdown a little bit. But it was a 180 degrees, like complete opposite of what I had to experience. It was a sense, my senses were different. Smelling things, a little bit. What do you mean? The senses.
Yeah, what do you mean? You talk about this a little bit in your book, but you mentioned like this your sense of sight and smell and taste. Talk to us a little bit. What do you mean? What was that transition like,
brother? So because it's all steel and concrete in there, and you get a habit of, I guess you get used to smelling steel. You get used to smelling concrete. I recognize the smell of wood. Now I don't now.
Yeah.
Being home so long.
Right.
But when I came home, I recognized the smell of certain things that nobody pays attention to. Right? I sat on the couch and I felt all the tension drain for the first time in 15 years, sitting on the couch, a love seat, and the carpet up the senses were adjusting to something I hadn't, my senses were adjusting to a level of comfort I hadn't felt in 15 years. And I'm talking about sitting down on the couch, Lionel, or walking on a soft carpet. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
so
yeah.
When it truly is riding on a train. I remember going downtown. My wife was living on Alston, right in Oak Park. And we, hop right on the train and go into downtown. And the ride on the L was excruciating because I wasn't used to people being that close to me. Just up on you like that. I wasn't used to people reaching out and putting a hand on your shoulder. Excuse me, sir, we don't touch in prison unless we meet a brother and give him a dap. What's up, bro? Too many men don't walk up to you and grab your shoulder. Hey, bro. So I had to adjust to touch, not, and I'm talking about a comrade's touch. Excuse me, sir, how a gentle, my man, one of those. So my senses had to adjust. And what I'm getting at is if your senses have to adjust, then you got some serious stuff going on inside you that has to adjust as well. And I had to take my time with life because this world was spinning so fast, I couldn't keep up with it. And I tell the story in my book, and I tell when people ask me, I was leaving my back door wide open, going to bed. I would walk out of a room with faucets running. Yamini at the time was like 5 years old. I left the milk just sitting there. She would come pick it up and spill everywhere. Didn't even twist the cap and put it back. Just simple little things that was throwing me off. And had people looking at me like, what's going on? Those looks that people were giving me prompted the title of that book. I wrote that book, I named the title of my book because of the way people were looking at my behavior, wondering, like, because sometimes they wouldn't say anything. You don't want to be rude because they knew I went through something.
Yeah.
But what? So I titled this book, What's Wrong with You?
Yeah. How long did it take before you started to feel normal on the outside?
Oh, that took years. It's an adjustment. It's an adjustment. When you're in prison, you're made to feel like something's wrong with the way you think, like you're a bug, like you have some type of mental illness. But when you come home after, for those of us who studied, who found peace and faith, and were preparing for our futures, when we came home, it was more like, wait a minute, we're not the bugs. This world is a mess. Our people out here, free people, got way more problems than we do. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So talk to us about what you've done since you've been home, because you've done a lot. And, I want to make sure that we're able to paint a picture for folks how you have contributed to the betterment of our people, not just our Muslim community, but the African-American community at large. Talk to us about what you've accomplished and what you've done since you've been home.
Well, when I came home, first thing I did was wrote the book. I wrote the book. Well, I take that back. It wasn't the first thing. First thing I did, I had to settled my brain down.
Mm-hmm.
And so I went to school January. I came home in June. By January, I was in class. So at 6 months after my release, I'm sitting in the classroom. I'm at Triton College, Triton's up there somewhere. And so I went to Triton. It was a plan. My wife helped me put a plan together. And the plan was to go to Triton to transfer to UIC. I needed a college that would take me and then, transfer my credits over. So I did. I went there. I went to school. I got my bachelor's degree. I got my bachelor's degree in sociology. And while I was getting my bachelor's degree, I wrote the book. I wrote the book during the month of Ramadan in 2012.
Wow.
Month of Ramadan. And I wrote it during the whole month. It only took me 30, maybe 40 days max to write that book from start to finish. And then after the completion of the book, I started, I wanted to start a nonprofit organization because that's what my spirit was. But I didn't have the know-how. I didn't realize, I didn't realize how much a nonprofit is. I mean, the workload of a nonprofit, you might as well go start your own Fortune 500 company. And so I wanted, my heart was in it, but it never really took off. And so I started my business, Proper Perception, in which I was selling my book, and I created a curriculum, for the book that schools were using and utilizing for the sole purpose to help our young people to comprehend the behaviors. This is like a behavior thing. Behaviors is what gets you to prison. What's going on in your head might not send you to prison. It can make you crazy, but your behavior, if you act out on it, you're going to jail. And so you act out on what you thinking, your butt going to jail. Yeah. And I wanted to impress that on the minds of our young people. It's these, you hanging out with five fools, you the sixth one. You can't convince parents that you're not up with the foolishness that your guys up with, and you're with them every day. Yeah, it's you're telling you. So that was the purpose of the book, and the way I wanted to relay that message had to be from me, and the way that I write, and the way that the way that I wrote my book, because I touch on, it can be insightful points. I have a way of speaking. I want you to understand what this point is, because I don't want to be just talking. And so I did that. I started my company. COVID slowed everything down, of course, and kind of changed my trajectory into what I am doing now. I'm getting into the advertising and the marketing, and I'm going to present that in a way that makes us proud of our people, our community. My intention is to help us market our businesses in a way that you will appreciate. And when I say appreciate, you get the total package of a wonderful advertisement for a fee that you can afford. That's the whole. You want those up your name in the lights up there on those big old billboards. Well, we're gonna figure out how to get you up there, but we're not paying no 10 grand. We're not paying we're not paying 7 grand. So that is where I am. Iron and I, we've worked on some things, and inshallah, I'm excited about this new phase of my career. But it's all in the mind. It's the mindset, the spirit, and you can do anything. And that is the beauty of this religion, the beauty of this faith. Because I was grounded in it, because I kept my mind, I kept my eyes in the Quran. I kept reading, I kept studying. I'm from this community. So my mom flooded me with Imam Muhammad's lectures. So she kept me abreast of everything that's going on. I was getting his Ramadan sessions before they got put out. So, I was getting some, bro, when I say I was getting some elite work from Imam Muhammad, I was getting that work. And it helped cultivate me for years.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So when you're 46 years old now, you entered into the belly of the beast at the age of 20. What are you most proud of? And you're selling yourself short a little bit, brother, in terms of your accomplishments. And I'm gonna call you out in a few minutes, because for those that don't know, this brother has spoken to thousands of kids all over the country, and educators. You know, if you had a chance, I think you can YouTube it. I think still, brother, you can still YouTube your presentations. Really well done presentation where he actually builds a jail cell on stage. As he tells his story, just makes the message that much more compelling. But what are you most proud of, brother? You know, when you reflect on the last 26 years and looking at where you are right now, you know, the old grizzled veteran that you are now.
The thing I'm proud about the most are the men that I watched develop in prison with me from my own eyes.
Interesting.
That is the thing that I am when I see some of these brothers post and I hear their names, I'm talking about, remember I tell you about that face hurting when I be grinning?
Yeah.
Because I knew where some of these brothers came from. I remember the situations. We had some brothers who were on the brink of suicide. And to see them today, we had some brothers who were so ingrained in that gang life.
Yeah.
Because of their mama and their daddy, their own parents and their uncles.
Yeah.
To pull, and their brothers, for them to, I watched the Quran, I watched Al-Islam, I watched this religion of ours, pull them from that.
Yeah.
And help them develop. The men, I love you, like I love Tariq, I love the men in our community, but those brothers are some of my favorite people on earth.
Yeah.
You hear me?
I hear you.
I'm talking about just because we were doing battle together. Like they really came after us. They tried to shut. We had places in prisons where I remember having to go to segregation for months. And SEG is prison within a prison. Because the administration was trying to shut down our religious services. So we had to go to war with these people. And these are men who went to war with us, went to war with me, and I'll go to war with. And so I love them to death. And those are the ones that it's easy to say family. It's easy to say family. It's easy to talk about accomplishments. But those brothers who held their head high, who in the face of there's a general Khalid bin Walid. He says, I bring with me men who love death more than you love life. Yeah. He said, we didn't come to fight, we came here to die. For I have with me men who love death more than you love life. That's how I feel about them. Yes.
Wow, that's powerful. I invite our brothers and sisters who are with us to put their comments and questions in the chat if they are so inclined to do so. I want to shift gears a little bit, and I want to hear from your perspective, your thoughts on the increasing rate of violence perpetuated by some of our African-American youth, the carjackings, some of the other craziness that we're seeing just in our communities. What are your thoughts on that, and what, in your opinion, needs to be done to effectively address it?
Well, to be honest with you, my mother gave you the answer years ago when y'all met. And she said to you, Allah will never change the condition until you first change what's in your heart. That ain't going nowhere, Lionel. That's not, it is not going anywhere. Now, knowing that, and knowing the power of men, of the male, that male presence is everything.
Yeah.
In that home, in that community. Just a father's presence, just looking over there, is going to check that boy's behavior. So, in my opinion, it's the men. and it's not even an opinion. It's the men. Men have to be men, raising their sons, being men in their communities. And I believe we can get a hold of a lot. Now, are we going to cure it? No, because Allah told you what the cure is. He said the cure is in your heart. And until you change, I don't know. I do not have an answer.
Yeah.
Other than to pursue the children. And I spend a lot of time with youth. I don't deal with a whole lot of adults,
Right.
honestly, because adults have made their decisions. Adults mess the world up. I have never known a child, a group of children, a group of young people to make any decisions, any constitutional decisions, any decisions on war, any economic decisions. Adults mess the world up.
Yeah.
So I focus on young people and trying to help them to have a better perception, a proper perception of what life is moving forward.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Until we change that condition that is within ourselves, and that's the African-American parents, the fathers, until these men change the condition in their hearts and what they want in their pocket, then your son, our sons, not all, they're going to get pulled off into this thing. Because men, there is a male bravado that is real. There is a male pride and ego that is real. And if the right person comes and if somebody comes and presses you, then it's a good chance you're going to run off with them. So the father, his job is to keep his son from being impressed by so much foolishness.
Oh, wow.
And he can get a hold of him.
Yeah.
I'm trying to tell you, man.
Yeah.
I got 3 girls. And I try to keep, and I watch and I do it intentionally, try to keep them from being impressed by the things I don't want them impressed by.
Yeah.
And it works.
Yeah, that's a great point. Wow. Never thought about it in that way. I mean, it makes logical sense, but I've never heard it communicated that way, that you want to watch with your children who they are impressed by and what they are impressed by, because that'll take them down a path.
And correct it.
That's right. That's right. We have a hand raised, a couple hands. We'll start with Brother Bashir. Brother Bashir, if you could take yourself off mute and go ahead and pose your question or comment.
Am I off mute?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
And thank you for the conversation, Omar, and appreciate everything that you've given us. I had a son also who was incarcerated under the same kind of conditions for 10 years. But a point I want to make, because I have a whole lot of points. I've been writing down notes all through this. I could take you out another hour.
We ain't got an hour, Bashir. We got
I know it. But coming back, we're talking about a problem, a situation, a problem that you got into, and a problem that you had to deal with coming out of prison, and a problem that exists today. And you mentioned about Khalid bin Walid, and Khalid had men who loved death better than they loved life. But the problem, I'm just going to make this comment. We've got to address the problem. We know it's a problem. And how do we address it? Because it's continually going on today. And we have to know, one, go to the root of the problem. The root of the problem is more than just ourselves. The problem is this society, and as you talked about the policies of the state of Illinois, that's part of the problem. Once we know the problem, too, as you mentioned about children are the responsibility of their parents, and they have to raise them. So we have the responsibility to teach our children, and even if they're not our immediate children. There was a saying in the Nation of Islam, it's the duty of the civilized to teach the uncivilized. So we have that duty upon us as Muslims, because we've come aware to address that situation. I know, Lionel, you've been addressing that situation with your situation in the school. Let me make this one comment. You came up in the Claire Muhammad schools. I had 2 generations of children. One group came under the University of Islam and the Claire Muhammad schools. I didn't have as much problem with them as the ones I had, and I had 11 children. Those who didn't have the opportunity to have that kind of social structure, the education and the moral structure. Although I tried to give it to them, there's a lot of influences out here in the society. So I know my son too, let me pose this question to you, Omar. When my son was incarcerated, he said, Daddy, I never realized, he said, so many of the young men in there, they didn't have social hygiene. The hygiene that he had learned from our principles in al-Islam, he didn't see it in those men, and they didn't have the family structure that he came from. So could you address that?
The hygiene?
Well, if you seen that similar situation when you were there, did you
the
see
family
your family
structure is, so the thing about the family structures of what I experienced, they vary. Those who were like myself, who still had mom and pops, they had a stronger support system. People who could send them, or who were willing to send them the type of reading material to, cultivate their minds. You got that the most out of men who had a family. Those who didn't have an entire family structure, had a mom or a grandma, they would just pretty much, get what they could when they could. The hygiene was a cultural thing. Okay. White males didn't bathe that much. Now, I don't know if it was a fear of the shower, a stereotypical something about prisons, but they had to get comfortable with bathing. That was it was mostly white males with that when it comes to that, and it was just very interesting. But black males, no, we took care of our hygiene, because number one, you have a lot of gangs in prison. Okay, your gangs are going to make you bathe. Hygiene in the gang life is one of the principles. They're not playing. Vice lords, Black Peace Stones, anybody under the 5-point star who their laws are Moorish American laws, and the members have a tendency to gravitate toward al-Islam, all of those none of those men had hygiene issues. Most gangster disciples didn't either, because although they weren't Muslim or didn't have Moorish American laws or backgrounds, gangster disciples have a lot of African Hebrew Israelite members. So they are too religious, and they too bathe. So the gangs made sure that their members, that their brothers didn't have those hygienic issues.
We have thank you for your question, Brother Bashir. I want to call on Brother Clyde next. Brother Clyde, if you could take yourself off mute and go ahead and pose your question.
Brother, I know it's 1 o'clock, so I'm not gonna disrespect the time that some people might have, but I just have to say, one, I know this brother since he was up to my knee.
Wow.
And I knew his parents. And we was talking about hanging out at the Claremont at the store. I had kids that were up there too. They pretty much he comes along with my kids. But I will say 2 things real quick, Brother Omar. First of all, I don't have to tell you, I can't tell you enough times how proud I am of you. And I'm glad.
You too, bro. I used to speak on you in prison.
If I ever need somebody 6'4", I know I can call you. You are an example of something that I have concluded about. 2 things you're an example of. One is how intentional prison life is to destroy the possibilities and the potential that they actually know at high levels exists in young people like you at the time that you went in there.
Yeah.
So you did some things, and you knew you did some things. You knew what you did. You can judge yourself better than they can. But it's not just because of that. It's all because there's a real intention, a very evil intention behind the whole institution. Other thing, I say that because I look at other prison systems outside of this country that are really designed to actually rehabilitate the people that come through there.
Mm-hmm.
So by the time they get home, they make sure they're ready for the feel of a soft couch, and they're ready for the smells and all the other stuff you're talking about, because they take them through a transition that guarantees they have a very high probability of success and not recidivism. So I just want to point out how conscious that the design of that system is, because people still don't believe just how very consciously that system is designed for the destruction. And it is no accident. We have some social problems in our community, but at the same time, there's a very intentional design on our community.
That's right.
Now we have to wake up and be responsible for it, but there's a very intentional design on it. Your project about advertising, etc. I got your phone number. We'll call you about something I think you'd be very interested in regard to that.
Inshallah.
Well, thank you, brother.
Well, look, it's 2:03. I want to thank all of you for participating. Huge shout out to Omar for being willing to share his story and to go very personal and deep with his experiences. Good feedback, Omar, in the chat from folks who really are appreciating what you shared today. So thank you, brother. I mean, we could go another hour, but we want to be mindful of time, and again, really appreciate spending this time with you today, brother.
Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate the invitation.